Remnant and restored prairie is important to maintaining Minnesota's biological diversity. Prairies provide habitat for a variety of wildlife, clean water, healthy soils, and recreation opportunities on a landscape unique in Minnesota. Of remaining prairies in Minnesota, about half are privately owned. Private landowners also contribute significantly to restoring prairie. Private prairie conservation is critical to prairie conservation in Minnesota. And we're here to have a conversation with Tim on his prairie. Well, Tim, we're out here next to one of your prairies. Do you mind telling us about this prairie?
I guess this is the last one that I did with Fish and Wildlife. I've done 7 of them now. And this was farmland, tillable farmland, and they came in and replanted it to wild grasses and flowers, and worked with Nature Conservancy, Pheasants Forever, to get the seed mixes, and they came out and seeded it. And so this one is really coming up nice now. It's had a good soil mix that the plants like, I guess. So.
When did your interest in prairie begin?
4 or 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I always just loved the outdoors and the wildlife. And I lived on the edge of town, so I didn't have much for land, and so I came out on these areas to hunt and trap, and I actually trapped on this slough back here, caught my first muskrats back there and stuff, so that's Fish and Wildlife land, and now I own land next to it, which was always my dream, to have some wild land, and lived my dream, I guess is what you want to call it. So.
How do you manage or maintain this prairie?
Graze cattle on it, and I kept the grazing and haying rights. It helps control the non-native plants. I work with the DNR and the Nature Conservancy on some of the wildlife areas on a grazing program, and they do a patch graze system. They'll go in and burn the grasses off. I stock it with cattle to graze down the regrowth of the non-natives. The cattle graze that off, and then when the warm season native grasses come up later, they aren't competing with the non-natives, and it just restores it to the natural prairie grasses that are supposed to be there. I've got area farmers that are still a little mad at me because I converted about 170 acres back into native prairie and took it out of cultivated crops. But then you come to fall and they all want to come and hunt on it because we have cover, you know, and we have animals, they live on it, you know. And with the pollinators, with the flowers, it helps their crops. And one of the biggest things is the pesticides and the herbicides on young birds. That's one of my biggest beefs, so when they complain that there's no birds out there. I never spray. I don't spray for aphids. You kill every butterfly, you kill every bee, anything in the area when they go over an aerial spray or they spray for the aphids. It wipes out all the insects. So those little ducks and the little pheasants have nothing to eat.
Do you have any advice for people who own prairie?
Put it in an easement and protect it, because there's so little of it. I worked with Bruce Fresky at U.S. Fish and Wildlife when I first started these easements and replanting to natives. And he said, if you have wishes that you want carried on in your life, he said, do them now while you're alive. Because he said, once you're gone, things can change through a marriage, through a divorce, through a financial, and your land gets sold and then it gets back into cultivation or something. So I put easements on 7 different pieces, paying back to all those animals I shot, trapped, enjoyed watching, and they can have it. And it's still, for the lifetime, they can hay it or graze it. So when I'm gone, if I find somebody or if my daughter decides she wants to raise cattle, then there's a place for it. All the areas around are black now and with cropland, and there's no pastures left, very little prairies left. And it gives the animals a place, and I guess that's what I'm going to leave. So this will give a little piece back from my end.